Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very special guest. We have an Asterian astrologer. He's actually my astrologer, and the exact reason why I moved to Miami was from my reading with Jade. We have Jade Luna. I mention him on the channel sometimes, and you just want to know more and more about him. He's amazing, celebrity astrologer. So many things he does. He's just the most incredible person ever. So you guys are going to want to stick around to the end. So let's say hello to Jade. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
incredible. So I know my friend
thank
Shane
you.
Sterling, he uses you as his astrologer, and he used to tell me stories about how he moved to Texas and relocated based on the reading and how his life has just taken off in every area of his life. He met his dream relationship, his career is out of this world, his finances, like everything are just amazing. And he used to tell me, like, listen, even Steven Spielberg consults Jade for like where to film movies and all these people. And I was like, okay, this interests me. So I did a
How
reading
did
with
he know
you.
that? I,
I
I did
don't
not know
know.
that was not
And
supposed to be public
if that's
information, but
not
I'm glad that
public,
it is.
I can cut that out. Nope. That's why I don't
No,
go live.
keep
That's
it,
why
keep it.
I don't go
Yeah.
live because I make all sorts of mistakes. So we don't want to
Um,
cancel ourselves over
oh,
here.
no, no,
So
no.
we
Actually, I have never spoke about that, but Stephen has. And
Mm,
so it is okay to bring that up. Yes,
yeah.
I've never had someone mention that before. I'm actually kind of excited for that to be out right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my reading with you, I did a regular reading and a location reading. So people can provide you with 10 different locations or however many that they're interested in. And you rank them based on like love, career, relationship, feeling at home, all these sorts of things. And it's funny because the day I met with you, I was actually very close to putting in an offer on a house in Naples. And that was on the list. And you were like, the one place you cannot move is Naples. And then my areas were all good in Miami. So I moved to Miami. Here we are 6 months later. Like my life is incredible. I've never been happier. I have my dream life. So it all has been true. And I'll let you talk in a second because I'm just going on. But I think things sort of started out in the 90s with you. You kind of really blew up after being Courtney Cox's astrologer. I think you told her like she was going to become a big name. And then your phone just went off the hook after she started talking about you and stuff. And I can see why. Like the call with you, I forget how much I paid, but it was the most valuable call I've ever had. And I can just tell this is like your purpose, your passion. I believe this has actually been your only job you've ever even had since high school, right?
All of that is true, and it was due to Courtney Cox that it happened that way. I was, and still am a musician, by the way. And so it's like even last night I was in LA. My music project was performing in Los Angeles, but I was in a band in the early 90s, and I was on tour with the Counting Crows. And Adam, the singer from the Counting Crows, saw me giving readings on the side after shows to make beer money, which was true back in my teenage years. And he saw me giving readings and he literally pulled me aside and he said, I'm dating someone named Courtney Cox, and I would love for you to give her a reading because she's really into astrology and things of that nature. And there were a series of things that were going on at that time, including health issues that were starting to develop in my early life. On tour, I passed out once on stage. I didn't know why. There were multiple things that were going on that while I started becoming an astrologer, I also started heading to India in my teenage years to start working on my health. Um, but yes, Adam introduced me to Courtney Cox. I went to Brentwood when she used to live there, and I gave her a reading in her home and told her that she was going to be a household name within a year. She had already booked friends, but wasn't allowed to speak about it. And so she knew that what I was saying was correct. And she stopped me mid-reading and said, I have to tell you this. You just told me I was going to be a household name within a year. And that's exactly what my manager told me last week. I had booked a sitcom and it's supposed to launch my career. Then she put an ad out about me in Cosmopolitan magazine and Bikini magazine. And I went back on tour at that time and my phone just started ringing and ringing and ringing. I started giving readings on a day-to-day basis. And I was kind of like, let's see how long this is going to last. I'll let this kind of run its course, and then I'll probably go out there and get a job, probably working at a record label, which was what I was kind of interested in doing at that time as well. A very funny story around that. And 30 years later, the phone still rings. And so that's how that started. And a series of people, I also, the very first guru I ever had, which was also my teenage years, was Bruce Rubin, and he wrote the movie Ghost. He won an Oscar for Ghost, My Life, Deep Impact, my favorite, Jacob's Ladder. He was my first guru I ever had.
Wow.
And while Courtney Cox was launching my career, Bruce was launching my career simultaneously at the same time. And it's been an incredibly fortunate career. It's been, I mean, I look back, this is my 30th year of being an astrologer. This year, I'm going to break 50,000 readings this year. And my IRS agent showed me all this information because I run a 501(c)(3) tax exempt business. So every single thing that goes through my banking account, every reading goes through the IRS. And so they said you might want to celebrate. We're also going to show you how much money you've made since since you were 18.
That's
Oh my God,
unbelievable.
yeah. So that was the beginning of my astrology career, and it actually chose me. It completely reached its arms out, grabbed me, and pulled me in.
Yeah, I can see that. And I can see you must just be referral after referral after referral because even when I did mine, I was completely blown away. And you didn't even and since I've had so many friends that have booked with you and they're blown away and then they tell their friends and their friends. And it's just literally one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. And before the reading, like I know your assistant, they're like, okay, you can't tell us who you are. He doesn't want to know anything about you. Like with the reading, so like you didn't even know who I was. And there was so much stuff that was just so accurate about how like my purpose is to help people on a global scale with health and all natural things that are natural and all these things that were just you didn't even know. I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is so true. And it really blew me away. So I'm wondering too, like what first got you to be interested in this?
Well, that was like when I started reading books, I was grabbing for astrology books very early. And I put horoscopes together in junior high. I gave my first reading ever to a one of my high school teachers, who was literally blown away by it. The interest was always there. It was never not there. I can trace having an astrology book back to when I was in elementary school. Linda Goodman's sun signs. You want to know what is really interesting is, you also know that I'm not a Western astrologer, and
Hmm.
I ended up, um, you know, reconstructing an ancient Greek system that was used thousands of years ago, a 27 sign system. And the book, Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, was the book that I had on my shelf. And inside that book, I had written some things about when I thought I was a Taurus. And I literally said in that book, which my mom has that book to this day, this doesn't remind me of me, although I believe in astrology, because I didn't ever feel practical, conservative, and or earthly. And so when I went to India, which I went to India due to health related issues that I was having, and I popped in to learn about Vedic astrology for a split second, and I saw that I moved back to an Aries. And I had to sit there and read that a little bit, and I'm like, okay, that's fascinating to me because I was trying to be a running back for the ASU Sun Devils before I broke my collarbone. Then that put me into learning bass guitar and music because I couldn't go back into football because my collarbone never rearranged itself properly. And I'm like, even to this day, right after this podcast, I'm going to be watching the NFL today. I've always been very motivated by sports, athleticism, and things of that nature. So I just seemed to, that made sense to me. And then I started learning in India about other ancient systems. And when I was in India, my second guru was a silent master.
Hmm.
And so I had to go to India and be silent for months at a time. That means not speaking to anybody. And so I heard about this book called the Yavana Jataka. The Yavana Jataka is an ancient Greek text that priests used regarding astrology, and it was a 27 sign system. So, oddly enough, when I was in India, I went to a library and they had the Yavana Jataka there, and it was
Hmm.
translated from Sanskrit to English. And so, out of boredom, again, I couldn't talk or speak for months at a time because we were focused on silence. Out of pure boredom, I reconstructed the 𝒔𝒂𝒗𝒆 back to its original Roman Greco format. Well, its original format was Egyptian, but it became a Roman Greco system for a while, and I translated it back to its Roman Greco system, and then I started using that system.
Wow.
And not knowing that no one had reconstructed it back to its Greek origin ever. And so when I started using this system, and I had a scholar there that was helping me at the same time also make some of the translations that I couldn't understand. He was actually at the ashram I lived at. Yeah, I started reconstructing this ancient system, and then I started using it. And so Asterian astrology is a reconstruction of an ancient 27 sign system that was only used by priests. And
Wow.
they were like, let's give the public 12 signs and let's let them believe that everybody born the same month as them has the same personality, when that's not at all a fact. You meet people born the same
Hmm.
day as you that are nothing like you.
True.
Um, this system addresses that. It's a very intricate, very deep system. And when I started using Asterian astrology, my business just sustained. It was already busy, but as I started using Asterian and as I started reconstructing the system, is when my business as an astrologer actually completely took off and it just kind of stayed in that realm. And its locational readings are
Mhm.
very unique. And so I don't want to lose sight on that locational subject because
I love
real
that
quick,
subject. Yeah.
um, they use old world locational. Old world location is that every city, state, or country has its own birthday. United States is July 4th, 1776. Every city, state has its own birthday. So what we do is we put your chart up with the chart of the 10 locations that you pick. And it's like a compatibility reading between you and that location. It blows away this astrocartography grid that's been used for like about 35 to 50 years the most. I don't like any modern forms of astrology because we're in an age where people have an idea and they write a book about it. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether it's right or not, and all of a sudden we have a bunch of misinformation out there. That's what to me a lot of Western astrology is. It's just people wrote a book without having a lot of ideas about what is true, and all of a sudden it becomes a reality. So the old world astrology, this is how they used locational astrology for thousands of years, was doing a compatibility reading with your chart and the chart of that location.
Hmm.
And you look at five things. Will you feel at home in that location? That's your spiritual connection to the land. Will you have a social life? Oddly enough, they use Rahu, the north node, for that. Your Rahu or your north node in connection to the north node of that location. Now, as I've evolved, I understand why they do use Rahu for community. The third, what will your love life be there? Your Venus in relationship to the Venus of that location. Will you make money there? How will your career evolve? The Sun and Saturn, those are career indicators. So we look at your Sun in relationship to the Sun of that place, and then health, Mercury, the most important one of them all. And then I give you an overall score. Like when I lived in Los Angeles, my overall score was a 6. And I had a good life there. I actually liked LA. In Joshua Tree, I'm a 7.5. My money score here is an 8 overall. My relationship number was an 8. My friendship social level was a 4. It was really low, which oddly enough, I'm not liked much here because there's a lot of Western astrologers around here that don't like the fact that I'm actively campaigning against it. But I ended up with a 7.5. Oh, and the 8 connection to the land. I ended up with a 7.5 here in Joshua Tree. I would actually say it was like an 8. Since I've lived here, everything has skyrocketed in my life.
Wow.
And so these locational readings are very significant. You still have your normal chart, like you're still going to have good
Mhm.
years and bad years. So even
Mhm.
though you're where you're at and things are going well, you're still going to have good months and bad months because you still have a natal chart that
Mhm.
takes priority over location. But that location is a cushion underneath you. And if you're not in a good place, you just don't have that cushion that someone in a good energy space has.
Yeah, it really blows my mind how much the location can affect us. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you see this, right? Being
Yep.
how many readings you do and how many people you interact with. Is there like any examples that come to mind of like people shifting locations and then just how dramatically like their life has changed?
I have a horror story, unfortunately, but I'm going to say it because I want people to know how important this actually is. In the 90s, when I started doing this locational reading, This person was not a client of mine, but this person went to a Western astrologer and she inherited a ton of money from someone in her family passing, and she didn't have to work ever again. And so she went to a Western astrologer and said, I can live anywhere on this planet I want. So we're going to go off of what you tell me here today. And the person said, you know what? You have a Venus line running through San Diego. Well, she packs up and moves to San Diego and gets in a car accident within 3 days of living there and spends 6 months going through reconstruction
No
surgery.
way.
So while she was there, one of her friends was my client, went and visited her in the hospital and said, why did you move to San Diego? Because her friend just had this weird feeling that was a little bit like she just up and left within a few days and just was
Mhm.
suspicious of what did you and she said, no, this Western astrologer told me to move to San Diego. So her friend says, you know what? I have an astrologer named Jade. He does a very unique system. I would like to send him your numbers. I mean, with San Diego. I'm not going
Yeah.
to tell him anything about what's going on here. So her friend Danica, yeah, she contacted me and said, "Can you run numbers for my friends?" And specifically that one, she's very interested in on the top San Diego without telling me anything. I literally sent her a message back saying, "Tell her not to move to San Diego."
Oh,
Her
wow.
health number is a 3 there.
Mm.
Her natal Mars conjuncts the Mars of San Diego. She's accident prone there, and she sent me a message back within seconds and said, you're never going to believe this. She's in the hospital right now, and I wanted these numbers run for myself. And you just told me exactly what happened to her. And I said
Wow.
everything would go there except for her health. And I said if she has to go to San Diego, tell her not to rent or buy property there, but just to go there for business reasons. She says it's too late. She got in an accident there, and she bought a house and everything. I'm like, oh no, yeah. I would have told her she was going to be in danger there. So that's how
Wow.
significant these are. And the Western astrologer, oh, you have a Venus, line running through San Diego. Well, keep in mind that Western astrology is astronomically off the constellations. So that grid you're using as well is off. And
Hmm.
so that's the importance of, aligning with proper astrology. And this is really tough for people, because it's hard for me also to tell people that they're not technically the sign they grew up knowing, because I know that a lot of people have had like conservative upbringings, and that one thing that popped them out of conservative, mindsets or religious mindsets was astrology.
Hmm.
And so they used astrology as a key to kind of open up doors into other facets of their life, and it worked. And they became people that were healers and highly transformative people. And it was astrology was that one subject that pulled them into a life as a healer. I have many of those clients. So then all of a sudden find out, oh, but what I was using wasn't correct. That's
Hmm.
really tough. I work with a famous rapper right now, and he's having a really hard time wrapping his head around this. He's like,
No pun intended, right?
what you would find this interesting. On the side, he teaches veganism,
Yeah.
and he ended up in this system being an Aries and a type of Aries called Dioscuri. And he goes and reads my book, and he goes, I thought I was a Taurus my entire life. And he said, and I go read your book on Dioscuri, and it says the star of coaches and healers and things of this nature, and that's exactly what I am. And he said, my moon sign is under a star called Bacchus, which is a Leo, and that's why I'm into music, and that's why I succeed. He goes, like, this is blowing my mind because do you know how hard it is? He goes, it's specifically hard on me because I look at my 3 kids and I've been calling them, one of them's named after their astrology sign, and now their signs are all wrong.
Oh my
And
gosh.
but he's having a hard time with it. I mean, he's actually mad and he feels
Yeah.
duped. He feels like, but he believes me. He because of I nailed his chart astrologically, and he got to go read Dioscuri, and he was like, "That's me, Mr. Impulsive. I never really felt that Taurus to begin with. I didn't feel very patient about things. I
Yeah.
felt very impatient. But yeah, he's struggling, like he's mad. Like he literally sent me a
Wow.
message yesterday. He got the reading last week, and he sent me a message. He goes like, he also, which is interesting, found me through, you know, some popular famous people that have been using me for locational readings.
Yeah.
And I'm in a couple books I didn't even know I was in about people choosing locations because of me and all that. Like, I had no idea it was in these books, but he heard about me in a book talking about locations, and he called me for reading, and then he finds out that he's an Aries, not a Taurus. And then he's really struggling though today. It's like he's really having a hard time with this. And I know, like I said, because for him, astrology was that one subject that also pulled him out of a very Christian upbringing. So
Hmm.
it's hard for me to tell people they're not the sign that they think that they were. Most people are
Yeah.
not. But
Yeah.
the thing is, these 27 signs are far more important than the 12. And I tell people, maybe don't worry about whether you're an Aries, not a Taurus, or this, that, or whatever. Maybe digest that new sign that you are, because these new 27 signs, well, they're not new, they're ancient, have been held from the public by priests for thousands of years. And you think it happens today? Yes, it does. Brahmin priests in India know nothing about 12 signs. They only know about 27. So India as a country dishes out the 12 signs to the public and reserves the 27 for the priest caste. If you're not a Brahmin in India, you cannot learn about these 27 signs. They're reserved. Now, Naksatra information is public, but to get really deep into Naksatra or 27 sign astrology, you have to be in the Brahmin caste. So the system that I use, Asterian, was the priest caste system of Alexander the Great. His priests used Asterian astrology. It was called the 𝒔𝒂𝒗𝒆 back then, but they
Hmm.
used this particular system for human analysis. Western astrology is an old seasonal calendar from the ancient world. Egyptians used the zodiac signs that we use today as a calendar, and they used the stars in the sky for human analysis. So let me explain. Western astrology starts the first day of Aries on spring equinox.
Hmm.
So the first day of Aries is the first day of spring. Okay, that has nothing to do with the stars in the sky right there. So in ancient time, we started the new year on spring equinox, and we should to this day. So let's use March as month one, because that's what we used to use March as month one. That would make October month eight. October
Hmm.
means month eight. Octo means eight. November means month nine. So when we stopped using the ancient calendar, Catholicism put the names of the zodiac signs on top of the old world calendar, put that out as the zodiac so people would stop observing the stars in the sky. It was the specific function of observing the stars in the sky that was made illegal. It was called anti-divination laws. And Catholicism worked very
Hmm.
closely with a very famous astrologer named Ptolemy. He is the godfather of Western astrology. Catholicism and Ptolemy got together and figured out a way to put out a system that the public would absorb that would be completely inaccurate. That's called
Hmm.
Western astrology. So people say, are you an Eastern
Hmm.
astrologer or Western astrologer? There's no such thing as one or the other. We use the zodiac. It's wherever Catholicism grew, you get Western astrology. Wherever Catholicism did not grow, India, Tibet, China, Egypt, you still get the stars in the sky. So where it wasn't made illegal to observe the stars in the sky, they still use real astrology. It's
Hmm.
wherever Catholicism spread, you get this old world calendar where they start Aries on spring equinox. We start Aries at 0 degrees Aries in the constellation. We use the constellations. Western astrology does not.
Yeah, I'm just like, you are so meant to be doing this. Like, there could be not to compare or downgrade anybody else, but there could be no better astrologer on the planet. This is like you were born to do this.
Thank you.
And one thing well, there's so many things I want to ask you about, but one thing is, I believe in God and I'm into astrology. So sometimes I get the odd comment like, Gillian, like, these don't mix. Like, this is wrong. Like,
Oh, let me address
so
that.
I get these DMs. I heavily feel so connected to God and I'm so into astrology. So what do you have to say about that?
Okay, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, 3/4 of the Dead Sea Scrolls were pulled out. Okay, the Bible has innumerable references of astrology. Isaiah 47, verse 13, let the astrologer stand up and save thee from what shall come upon thee. Okay, so the Bible has a lot of conflict in it. I believe a lot of Roman lawyers in ancient time were involved in the Bible. Why not the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest text, which actually has Christ's words in it? Why can't that be used? Well, because there are innumerable references of astrology. Ancient priests, when it came to building a temple, would not build a Catholic or Christian temple without the constellation Taurus being engraved into the ground before they built it on top of it. Astrology was a huge part. Hezekiah had 12 children, each one of them named after the zodiac. It's like, no, there are innumerable references of astrology that are supported in the Bible, and then there are some that, behold, astrologers will burn as stubble. It's filled with contradictions. So you know, I believe that a lot of modern religion has been controlled and organized. The Dead Sea Scrolls are often where I tell people to kind of go get your research from. If you want to really get into Christianity, why
Hmm.
not go into a book that actually has Christ's words in it? The
Hmm.
Bible does not. It's all, I think he said this, I think he said that. So you can, and also in ancient time, and also the Vatican as well, there's tons of astrological references and even sculptures, even inside the Vatican. There's even zodiac images. So it's all there. But so let me explain why there's a problem in ancient time between astrologers and priests. They were always at battle of who had more clout. In ancient time, if you needed counsel, you had one of two choices. You were either going to go see a Catholic priest or a Christian priest, or you're either going to go see an astrologer. So astrologers were somewhat of a threat to priests in ancient time, and a lot of them were Christian, by the way, because Christianity has a lot of pagan roots in it, including when you say someone's soul, I'm here to save your soul. Soul means sun. They put a U in there to confuse you. It's SOL. There was a sun god, and he was the light of the universe. That's why you take Sunday off of work, the day of the sun.
Hmm.
It was a very solar religion in ancient time, and it saw the sun as the center of the universe, and astrology was huge in ancient time. And there are references in the Dead Sea Scrolls of God having 12 faces, which were the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Hmm.
These were the different faces of God in ancient Christianity. So, there's a lot of rhetoric about what astrologers are, psychics and mediums and things of that nature, but they were a huge part of the beginning of Christianity. But they didn't want the competition. So they started making them bad. They started inserting a lot of
Mm.
phrases into the Bible, which at that time, people don't realize, well, I'm not Catholic. I use the King James Version of the Bible, though. Well, if you're using the King James Version, it's Catholic because the Pope has had control over what that book has said, not said from the very beginning. So priests decided to demonize astrologers, psychics, mediums, even though they were once a big part of their religion, because they just didn't want the competition anymore.
That makes
So you
total
had to go
sense.
seek out a priest for counsel, not an astrologer.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, I like that. Okay, and a bit of a topic shift. I know you did mention, so you are vegan too. And you
I am
did
vegan.
mention doing things where you were silent, which part of that is so appealing to me because I live in the most crazy house raising two little girls right now. And sometimes I just think, oh my gosh, I cannot even hear my own thoughts ever. So when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, that would be so nice. That must have, okay, first of all, that must have been a deeply spiritual experience. And does veganism, do you feel like it's sort of, I find it more spiritual. Do you? And do you sort of feel like kind of it's an accent and kind of works with what you do, really, right? Or no?
Yeah, and the biggest regret I have is I didn't do this a long time ago.
Wow.
I'm 8 years vegan, and for someone that was diagnosed with an enlarged heart when I was young, I'm actually embarrassed it took me this long to be vegan. I fought it tooth and nail. I grew up in Arizona. Meat and potatoes is what I grew up on, and I had a guru in India telling me to be vegan. And he's like, not Indian food, vegan, because Indian food is loaded with butter and ghee and all these things that just really clog your arteries. Unfortunately, I had to learn that first. So I did go vegetarian and became, very much a part of the Ayurvedic lifestyle out there in India. I still had the guru saying you have an enlarged heart, the type that you need to cut out all fat from your body. And he was himself was not vegan. And so I fought it. I fought it. And I had even a guru that would tell me to, not eat meat and things like that. And when he would leave, I'd order pepperoni pizza from an place down the street. And so, it's really interesting that I had so much focus on even normal doctors that didn't believe in veganism telling me to be vegan. It's like, you know what? If you just cut fat out, your heart's good. You have an enlarged heart, it's not the
Hmm.
end of the world. But if you start adding weight on your body, if you start clogging your arteries, you're going to have way more problems than other people. So your job is to stay thin. I heard that over and over and over again. It was the movie What the Health. I mean, I had a guru in India telling me to be vegan. I didn't listen. It was the movie What the Health that midway through that movie, I turned it off going, I'm going to be vegan. It's that particular movie that kind of popped in and turned a light on in me that even my teacher in India couldn't do, which, the animal safety component part of it, now I'm motivated by. I wasn't so much at the very beginning. I'm even embarrassed by that. There's a veil when you eat meat and or dairy. To me, dairy is equally as bad. There's like a veil over you and that type of consciousness that you kind of have to step out of before that veil is removed. And now I am into the animal safety part of it. I can't believe it. Here I am with a house filled with animals right now, and how I wasn't protecting their lives and things like that. It was health first though that motivated me. And the first year that I went vegan, my heart condition started to improve rapidly, and that kept me on the path. And of veganism, I've been vegetarian for a long time, but vegan just 8 years.
Wow, fascinating. Isn't it fascinating to me too? So many people I know who consumed a heavy animal-based diet develop these heart problems. And when you think of our heart, you just think of love, consciousness, like love and everything, right? And that's all like the animal products are all death and like everything opposite of what we truly are. So it's just like no surprise people develop these heart conditions and everything that happens. And that's incredible. Thank God you found that path. It sounds like it was meant to be for you. And so you noticed huge benefits. Incredible. And did you
Immediate.
spiritually and stuff too, or no?
Yeah, it's huge. It's significant how much more you can feel and receive, even from nature itself. When you kind of align with nature, you kind of tap into this natural consciousness that's a part of it. And so, yeah, no, it is so interesting that out of all the very unusual things that I do, being an astrologer, there's a lot of, I'm an Agora, which is a type of spiritual path where we kind of only focus on death and dying. Out of all the various unusual things about me as a person, it is still veganism when you mention it that pisses people off the most. Okay.
I don't get heavy into those conversations either, even though I'm technically in kind of the vegan influencer niche. I'm all for everyone is on their own path too. I'm not
Yeah.
dogmatic. They have to do what they want to do, but I agree there's a lot of heatedness out there with that topic for sure. And I think you're right. I think the way you put it about sort of the light that comes out and that triggers some people, I think you're really correct. And I was just thinking too with the readings. Okay, I have a random question because we were talking about like darkness and light. There must sometimes be like dark readings and bad readings. Like there must be is that must be hard to do, right? If you know you have to get on a reading and you're sort of, maybe the location they don't want is bad or even like things in their life. So how does that work?
Well, it comes from that, I have a path that does deal with darkness. It's not evil. It's dealing with the shadows that exist inside of us. The basic premise of Agora is that you already are light. You just don't know it. And your shadow is in the way. And so Agora is a pretty, not pretty, it's the single most aggressive path with looking at your shadow self that there is. So it's kind of like taking the darkest parts of yourself and then bringing them into the light. That's what it's about. And so my first guru would be like, don't even worry about your light. You already are it. You just don't know it. So let's only focus on your dark because it's what's in your way. Now, you can get there by looking at your shadow. You can get there by just pushing it aside and not looking at it. There's multiple
Hmm.
ways in which we can become realized in this life. Some people have charts like mine. I have one of those charts. I have one of those charts where, I did have a mom try to commit suicide in front of me when I was younger over and over again. That I
Wow.
believe that my heart condition kind of revolved around that to a certain degree. And the first spiritual intelligence I ever had was being a teenager going, you know what? After my heart diagnosis, going, I think this came right from my mom. I want to find ways that I can improve it. That kind of sent me on a spiritual path. I was diagnosed with a heart illness that the first doctor that ever saw it said I wasn't going to live to see 21. He goes, "Oh, this is a type of enlarged heart where your heart's just going to stop." And
Whoa.
this was a conversation I had. It was so horrifying that I stopped sleeping for periods of time because
Hmm.
I thought I was going to die in my sleep. Every night I went to sleep, I'm like, I'm going to die in my sleep. I'm going to die in my sleep. That all this was going on. This was going on simultaneously while I was a musician too. And so And which was so hard about that. In my teenage years, I was in a band that was becoming really well known. And it's like we had songs that were out and things like that. And I was having to give that up to go live in India to recover from my health. So it was the darkest time I've ever had in my life was being diagnosed with Epstein-Barr out of the blue and an enlarged heart at the same time, and being told I probably was not going to live to see that I was 21. And I was, I had a pretty enthusiastic teenage years. I mean, I was
Mhm.
like, someone that was doing very well as a teenager, as I was, a running back in my high school, and I was trying to get a scholarship to be an ASU running back for the ASU Sun Devils, broke my collarbone, then ended up in a band that was signed like right away. I even would leave school for periods of time in high school to go on tour with a band that already was signed and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, I'm in India, wondering if I'm going to
Wow.
live a couple more years or not. And so Agora was a path of meditating on death and dying only. And they're like, you are afraid of death. Everybody is. And the belief is in Agora is that your entire personality that you have is developed based upon knowing you're going to die one day and that you're eventually going to greet death, and how you're going to experience that moment. You're expressing it every single day that you wake up, knowing that this body one day is going to end. And so people that are more joyous will probably have a little bit more joy about that day when it's come. People that struggle with depression are actually, they believe they struggle because they know that day is coming. And this identity they have is going to dissolve to some degree. That's not true, but this
Hmm.
body that we see, I am a firm believer of the spirit and the afterlife. Not only that, the reason why I got into Agora, Agora was like, you don't want to read a book about what's going to happen to you in the afterlife, okay? You want to experience it while you're alive. So the path of Agora was, let's remove the veil now. Let's meditate on death, as Buddha did. Buddha meditated on death until he became realized. So we believe Agora kind of comes off of Buddha. And the belief is also that if you overcome your fear of death, that rearranges your whole lifespan, that the fear of death subconsciously tracks it. So when I got into Agora, it was let's have experiences that we remove that veil between you and the other side, which was heavy chanting, heavy meditation, anything that could be used to kind of remove that veil. The belief was if you started having those experiences, which invoked an energy called Kundalini. A Kundalini is a serpentine spiritual force that exists in all of us. And when you activate it, it actually opens you up to the astral realms and to what we call the high heavens. And so we started aggressively chanting. I had already had a Kundalini experience before I got to India by my first spiritual teacher, Bruce Rubin. He wrote the movie Ghost, Jacob's Ladder,
Hmm.
My Life. He was my very first spiritual teacher. And the very first day I met him, as he had to give me an introductory course, I went to see him and sit down. And he looked at me when I sat down, and he activated my Kundalini just by looking at me, and it
Wow.
started swirling up my spine. And he said, "Oh, you're an old soul." He said, "If that can
Wow.
happen, and I just met you," he says, "you're gonna go far here." And he embraced me as a student right there and then. So when I went to India, I already had knowledge of Kundalini, and it was based upon taking the spiritual energy and moving it through your crown chakra, taking it from the root chakra and expanding it through your crown chakra. Once expanded through your crown chakra, you'd start having experience of the heavens, as we would
Mm.
call them. And that started to happen to me. I don't talk a lot about that because I don't like it when people use spiritual experiences to hover over people like they're important. Because I do have experiences because I work for them, not because I'm special,
Hmm.
not because I'm more important than other people. I have spiritual experiences because I work towards them, and anyone
Hmm.
can do them if they work towards them. So I want to be really clear about that. But I
Hmm.
started having experiences of what was going on in the other realm here, and there was actual points when I was in India going, "Wow, I'm actually looking forward to dying. If that is what's going on here," and I was just touching a little tiny thread of that. I'm like, if that's what's on the other side of here, I can't wait to get there. And then my first Agora guru said, if you stay in this consciousness right now, you are going to completely rearrange your health because you're going to remove the subconscious fears in your body of that event. And now I'm here many, many, many years later, and I don't even concern myself with, do I have the heart condition? Yeah, but my heart's beating at a normal rate. That's from being vegan for the first time. I
Hmm.
don't have the heart palpitations I would live with on a day-to-day basis. Going, oh, there's my heart fluttering. Am I getting ready to die? all that stuff is gone. The fear is gone of that day. The fear is gone of what could come on the other side of all this stuff. That came from actual experiences. So Agora is like, you can have belief, you can have faith if you want, but why not just have the experience and just remove that belief and faith? Because if you have experiences, it's now you're experiencing it. And so that path, Agora, which is a really dark path. In India, it's like saying you're into Santeria and stuff like that. Even in India,
Mhm.
it's like a darker type of path. That particular path, I believe, saved my life. But
Wow.
as my first guru said, we believe you were always an Agora. We believed you'd been an Agora in previous
Right.
incarnations. And this
Hmm.
health issue existed to get you back on track with us. And I believe that strongly now. 30 plus years later, I'm going, yeah, absolutely 100%. I became an Agora in this life, but it was a path I was already on. And I ended up with my second guru who was highly advanced. He said the exact same thing to me without knowing anything about my issues. When I first met him, he said, "Oh, you belong to the Divine Mother." And I went, "What do you mean I belong to?" He goes, "No, you belong to the Divine Mother." He said, "You can focus on the Divine Father if you want, but you belong to the Divine Mother." And he goes, "You're one of very few of those out there. There's not a lot of you out there." And he said, "So I'm going to do something different than I teach everybody else here, which is to focus on light, meditation, and the power of the Divine Father. You're going to be focusing on the Divine Feminine here." And he said, "Because that energy got you to me." And he goes, "You've been doing it for lifetimes." And so he said the same thing that the Agora did. The Agora has a lot to do with the power of the Divine Feminine. And
Wow.
so the goddess Kali is often invoked. She's kind of a scarier type of goddess. But so when you see even like the scarier images I put up of Kali, that's scary on purpose. We believe whatever fears you have got to be removed from you. Your fears are attractors. If you ever hear me talk about manifesting, I'm not a giant fan of manifesting. I believe there's a destiny the universe has planned for you to go through, and you kind of have to surrender into that. But we do believe that fear manifests. And we believe if you're a fearless person, then, well, you might not have to deal with the same things in life that other people have to deal with. So the path of Agora is about overcoming your fears. So these images of Kali that you'll see on my Instagram that are scary are supposed to be. They're supposed to pull up your fears. So you work through them, which we believe the fearless have much better lives than the fearful, even more abundant
Wow.
lives than the
That's
fearful.
mind blowing. Yeah. So how can, those of us who don't go to India, don't have the gurus, live in our everyday life, but who have like some of these fears, how can we work more towards releasing those fears?
That is Agora right there and then. The
Mm-hmm.
entire path is meditating on what your fears are. Like if you were out here in Joshua Tree right now and you're at my home, I got this beautiful home in Joshua Tree and I'm on the side of a mountain with this beautiful view, but I won't take you and show you my altar room. It's terrifying. It's terrifying on purpose. And
Yeah.
because when you sit in it, it's got to pull up your fears. It has to. So
Mm.
it's a very vigorous path of working on your fears. So you sit in your altar or spiritual space and it's black here. My room in the back that is dedicated to Kali is black. And images that are in there would literally go, "Oh my God, is this like the devil in here or something like that?" No, it's nothing like that at all. It's like whatever is coming up in you right now, as I've had people want to sit in my room before, whatever comes up is what you need to work through. Because if you can work through your fears in this room, then you're not going to have to deal with what brings out your fears out in life. So the path of Agora is very specific that you have to experience an equal amount of light and dark in a lifetime. Astrology proves that by
Yeah.
Saturn exists, Pluto exists, Uranus exists, Mars exists. These are the North and South Node are the strongest in the shadow. So these are shadow planets where you have to deal with your shadow self. When you see beings like Christ and Buddha, they didn't run off, with perfect lives. They suffered. They went through really intense and very challenging lives. Buddha did, Christ did, Krishna. These are beings that kind of
Mhm.
embrace the suffering of this existence here. So I don't think that these higher beings are that far away from the agoric path because their lives were very agoric in nature. If you look at Christ and Buddha, their lives were directly confronting the shadow on a day-to-day basis. Well, Agora sets it up where we kind of induce that into your life, that struggle between the light and dark in you, so your light can come about in a spiritual setting and kind of work directly on your shadow self, which we believe improves your life in the world. If it's true, you have to experience an equal amount of light and dark. We believe if you deal with it in your spiritual space, you don't have to deal with it in your life. So we believe agoras become healthy. We believe they even say in India, they become rich. They often work with celebrities and all these other
Mhm.
various things. A lot of agoras in India are these like scary people that have a huge influence on Bollywood. Like Bollywood celebrities go seek out agoras, and it's funny how that happened to me in this life, where as soon as I got into agora and started kind of confronting darkness through my spiritual life, as opposed to dealing with it in my life, I started having this really successful life where I didn't have the dark in it that I had when I was younger. I mean, my life was, I mean, I had a crazy stuff go on in my familyhood.
Mhm.
And I was living out of my car when I was a musician, traveling with
Mhm.
that band that was signed, and went
Mhm.
from that life to all of a sudden going to India, embracing this kind of darker path. And all of a sudden, I'm watching my career succeed. I'm watching other things succeed because
Mhm.
I'm not bringing the dark into my personal life that we do have to experience. It's all being dealt with in my spiritual life.
That makes so much sense. That really clicked with me, the way you put it with all the fears and everything. I never thought about that. And it is true. We do, we do manifest with the fears, you know?
Yep.
So it's good you put in all that work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fearlessness, we believe, is the path to success. So it's a rigorous path of looking at your fears. So if there's something let's just say you're in a relationship. This is how significant and specific it is, and you're afraid of losing that person. Well, that fear can put that right into action. And how many times have you had a fear about losing someone and it starts to turn into an intuition that comes to life? Well, in India, my agoric teacher would say, well, let's go meditate on what that fear is. There's a fear of loss here.
Hmm.
Is this an intuitive thing or is it just fear? So in Agora, we base it on, there's many elements of Agora, but one of them, is it fear you're experiencing or is it intuition?
Mm.
So I've been so far developed on that path through practice that I can tell when something is fear and when something is intuition. And most, I would believe 90% of what people go through are fears, not technical intuitions. I had this
Mm.
lady a couple months ago. She was getting ready to fly to Africa,
Hmm.
and a shaman that she ran into said, "Don't go to Africa. I just get a bad feeling about you going." And she has a dream of her plane crashing. She contacts me and said, "Okay, can you look at my chart?" I'm like, "For what do you want me to look at your chart for?" She's like, "I was told by my shaman not to go to Africa, and I just had a dream that I crashed on a plane." I tap into it. I'm like, "This is her fear." I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm gonna change your belief system. Go to Africa. Keep your plans going. Oh, but what about the dream? I said, it's fear.
Hmm.
I had her chart up too. She's not dying from a plane crash, which oddly enough, I've had three of my clients do, and I know exactly what the alignments are for that. So I'm like, you don't have that. And so I said, but I have to tell you something my guru said to me one time I was on my way to India, and my mom contacted me and said, Jade, I got a really scary feeling about you going to India this time. I had a really bad feeling about you in India this time. And I also, like this other person, had this dream about being in a car accident in India. And so I call my guru at this time of rotary phones, and he picks up the phone, and I'm like, Bao, I'm coming out to see you pretty soon, but I have to tell you something. I had a dream, and this is how Agoras work, by the way. I had a dream that I got in a car accident in India, and my mom has this very deep intuition that something bad could happen to me there. Do you think I should come? And do you think something bad's going to happen? And he's like, it might, but come anyways. This is agoric talk already. It's like, he's not going to alleviate
Mm.
my fear. He was like, I
Yeah.
would still like you to come. So
Hmm.
I would like you to be here at this time, that time, and that time. Is like, but do you think something bad's going to happen? It might, but keep your plans. He's not going to move me through my fear. He wants me to deal with whatever that
Yeah.
fear was. So this was a
True.
long time ago. So I sat down and meditated and I went deep beyond the fear and went, oh, you're going to be fine. I go to India and have one of the best trips I've ever had in India ever. So when this person contacted me about Africa, I knew she was going through something very similar that I went through. It's a test. Are you going to follow your fear? Or are you going to actually just do what has been set in motion by the divine already? And she goes and has the best trip. And she literally
Mm.
sent me an email about a week and a half ago and saying, that trip was so utterly amazing. I think literally, this is her interpretation of things, that when you're going to have a life-changing experience, your fear comes up because it wants to keep you in the box that you're familiar with. She said, because that trip I just had just changed my life. And I had a shaman and a dream tell me not to go, but here you are saying go. And if something's going to happen, something's going to happen. I literally did kind of allude to that too, as my guru did with me. He's like, oh, you might get in a bad car accident, but that's might be what the divine has in plan for you. So I'll see you pretty soon. That's the
Hmm.
way he talked to me. He's like, if that's what the universe has in store for you, that's what you're going to go through. So yeah, fear is the ultimate attractor. And so I'm not, you won't hear me talking about manifesting because there's a divine plan that we have to experience whether we like it or not. And we can't
Wow.
just force consciousness around to do our bidding. I mean,
Hmm.
and someone like yourself that, has a connection to God, it's like you don't get to control that being. It's kind of crazy that we think we're in a world that we get to control that force around and we get to do what we want. No, we don't. We surrender into that divine. But we do believe the more fearless you are, the more abundance you can attract and the more fulfilling your life can actually be. So the fearless, we believe, live the abundant lives. That's how
Hmm.
we see it. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. That is so true. So we
Yeah.
need to be more fearless to just live a better
Fearlessness.
life.
That's Agora is
Wow.
what it means is it means to live without fear or terror. That's what Agora means fear in India. Agora means to live without fear.
And it's kind of nicer to think like we have to be fearless and work on that and just kind of understand that there is a divine order and that we're not in control of manifesting everything in a way that's kind of just like we can be like, oh, we're not as in control, right? Because sometimes when you think you're responsible for manifesting everything, it can drive you crazy.
Well, you're talking to someone that has had a 30-year career as an astrologer that doesn't technically believe in manifesting. And none of my
Yeah.
famous clients really believe in it either. And why,
Yeah.
I am a full believer of manifesting through action. Karma is the law of action and reaction. So if you want to succeed in something, you have to put the energy into it. It's about
Mhm.
action, and putting energy into something. So, and my guru used me as an example when he heard about manifesting. I would sit on stage with him when he'd give a seminar to like hundreds of thousands of people, not 100,000, but hundreds and or thousands. And I'd be on stage with him. And when he heard about manifesting for the first time, about how your mind controls things, he looked over at me and he was funny and he played jokes and I'm on stage in front of about 500 or 600 people and he's like, and my nickname was Mahayogi, which meant the great yogi, and he would say, Mahayogi here. I can think about slapping him all day long. I could think about, oh, Mahayogi's not getting me tea on time. I should slap him. I incur no karma and no ill effects by thinking about slapping Mahayogi here. But if I reach over and slap him, I now have karma to be slapped back by someone in the future. And he said the idea that your mind controls your reality does not explain why the most horrendous people can run this planet and can consistently materialize wealth. He
Mhm.
said, and or people that are have no other desire than to live a life of light and conscious have to go through one struggle after the other. He was like, so your karmic imprint exists. Most of these wealthy people were people that actually renounced in their previous lives, so they're balancing out by having. And he's like, we have this constant balance of yin and yang that goes on in life. So I have to go to something that Sean Penn said. Sean Penn, I don't know what movie he did. It could have been Milk, where he all of a sudden lost work. He stopped working, and he talks about this openly. And this would be very law of attraction from the karmic standpoint that I'm referring to. So Sean Penn was sleeping in his, he woke up from a night of having a horrible sleep, as he said, going, no one's contacting me for movies anymore. I have three houses. I have three mortgage payments I need to make, and I'm not booking any movies. He got so upset, he went outside and started building a fence around one of his houses. And as he's building his fence, his business just picked right back up again. And he
Mm.
believed it was the act of putting that fence together, the action of doing things, that brought his business right back on track. And so for me, if I have one of those harder
Mhm.
years, as I've had before, 2008 was the hardest year I've ever had in astrologer. That was when the economy dropped from the housing market in
Mhm.
2008. That had a direct effect on me more than any experience I've ever had. And I went from being booked from 4 months out that year to you could get in the exact day that you contacted me. And for me, it was terrifying because I had never had that experience before. So, same scenario. I go to India that year. I see my guru, and I'm like, you know what? I might not be able to be an astrologer for much longer. And my guru said, why? And I said, my business is kind of drying up. And he was like, are you an astrologer or are you not an astrologer? I'm like, yeah, I'm an astrologer. He goes, does a man leave his wife having a bad year in marriage? I'm like, no. And he goes, well, make adjustments in your life, accommodate for having maybe a few readings a month, and be an astrologer. I want you to be flexible. If you have a good year, have abundance. If you have a bad year, adjust, but keep that title as an astrologer. If you're so eager to give it up under one bad year, maybe it should be taken away from you and given to somebody else. I'm like, well, you're saying a few readings a month. Maybe I should just get a trailer out in the middle of the desert somewhere in Arizona. He said, yes. I come back, not a joke, in 2008, buy a trailer in the middle of the desert on the Colorado River, and it was $300 a month after I bought it. I put down 15,000 for it, and it was going to be 300 a month. That was pretty much all my savings right there. And as soon as I get that place, my business just picks right back up again. And it has been relentless ever since. So I called my guru in India. I said, my business picked it up. He said, because the universe wants you to be flexible. If you're not flexible, what are you doing in this business? Do you do this business because you care about people, or you do this business because you're checking your banking account? Because if you care about people, you're going to make a ton of money in this life. This is what he said. But if you're worried about how much money you make and whether you have good years and bad years, you're going to go walking away from a job that you've actually had for a decade plus because of one bad year. Let's give that job to somebody else. Do this work because you care about people. I believe to this day that I've had a 30-year career because I care about people. I mean, I don't care if I'm on an agoric path that deals with dark things. I don't care if some of the things I do challenge people. I care about my clients, and I want to do everything I can to make my clients have the best of lives. I want all of us to succeed and be abundant people. That's like my goal for everyone that calls me is how can I help this person become more abundant? I care about people, and if I have a good year, great. If I have a bad year, I'm going to adjust, but I'm keeping this job.
I
And
love
so
that.
a lot of people don't know this, and this is really important that are in the wellness industry, that consciousness, you can call it God, consciousness, universe, whatever you want to call it, is going to put you through the exact tests I just said. And if you're not flexible and you're so worried about the money in your banking account, the universe is going to give your job to somebody else. It is a test that the universe throws at us constantly. And if you are flexible, if you are ready to adjust to life and stay that title that the universe had given you, oh, it's going to give you abundance when it's done with that phase. But if you walk off the job because of a bad year, it's already given your business to someone like me who cares about people.
What a story. This is just like, wow, so true.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for, walking through these types of difficulties. And if you are in the wellness industry, you're on a spiritual path as well. And the laws that apply to you on how you make money are not the same as normal people. You have internal tests you have to go through, internal things you have to walk through that other people don't. And they're very subtle things. Like the universe knows I'm flexible. It knows that I could easily live in a trailer in the desert because when I accepted that living in a trailer, a peace came over me like, oh, you don't have to worry about so much. You can relax, maybe focus on other things, your spiritual life, and give three
Yeah.
or four readings. You don't have to worry about abundance and all these other things. You can relax. And as soon as I accepted that, abundance literally showed right up. And again, it started through another celebrity client in 2008, plugging me out there. And I'm like, here comes the business all over again. You have to be flexible in this business, and you have to accept that you're going to go through spiritual tests on whether you keep this business or not. And they're very subtle, but the universe is out there looking to see who it can use in the future at all times. And it puts you through these small, minor tests. A, do you care about people? If you care about people and you're in the wellness industry, you're going to make a living at one point or the other. You also have to have something to truly offer people. So if I'm working with people right now, it's like, how do you succeed in the wellness industry? First, care about people. Don't worry about your banking account. Do this because you actually care about people. Second, you have to have something to offer. You have to have something that is unique. that you offer to other people. It's and a lot of people don't know what their gifts are, and that's the thing that is the most challenging thing for me as an astrologer is when someone comes to me and says, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and I've never known. I've never had that passion for what I want to do, and I don't know. My job is to help that person find that and to access the gifts that are a part of their chart in their life. But you have to have something to offer, and you have to care about people. And you can't do this job because your parents didn't pay attention to you and you didn't get the
Mhm.
voice that you wanted when you were young. So you're using spirituality to have that voice now. It's like you have to truly have a spiritual purpose here. It's not just for people that didn't feel like they were heard when they were children, so now they're trying to be heard now. And I'm saying that sincerely because of how many people are in this industry just wanting to be heard. And you can tell because they're all over the place. And
Right.
it's like it means they're promoting themselves above the work that they actually have to offer. These are people that want to be heard. We don't get
Mhm.
into this business because we want to be heard. We get into it because we care about people. And so these are really important factors of success are we're here, as I said in recent podcasts, we're in the care business. We care for people. And I joke about the astrologers here. It's like, yeah, I'm probably going to be taking their business if they're worried about how much money they're making. They're going to
So
have me
true.
working because I care about people and I'm going to take all their
Yeah.
business. And I make that joke because I know I'm in this for the right reasons. I don't
Hmm.
think a lot of people are in the wellness industry for the right reasons.
I agree.
So
Hmm.
care about people, have something to offer, and do this because it's your path. And
Hmm.
you're going to have good years and bad years, just like a marriage. You don't think about leaving a wife because you've had a bad year or vice versa. It's like you stick things out. And if the universe trusts you and it knows that you're going to be the stable force in this industry and you're not going to walk in and out of it because you have good or bad years, it's going to douse you with a ton of work. But these little tests that we go through are all checking in to see where you're at with your ego. Is this your ego that you want to do this in, or is your heart that wants to care about people? I joke,
Hmm.
I'm tatted right now from the neck down. And I say this jokingly. I still, that's going to not affect any of my business because I care about people. I don't care
Hmm.
how many tattoos I have. I don't care if my look is on the eccentric side of things. I don't care that I've lived with Agoras in India and they're a really scary path. I care about people and I want my clients to succeed. And so my heart is felt in my business. And I tell people, just let
Yeah.
your heart be felt in this business.
It is felt like I know because I did the reading with you, and to think how many readings you do per month and per year. Like, I know a lot of people in a lot of industries, say they're a real estate agent or something, and they're so busy, like they just lose that care a lot of times, right? And then, like a younger, more driven, caring agent comes in and starts taking their business, right? But there's a reason you're so successful because you really it feels like I always tell people too, it feels like he cares so much and he's so into it. So yeah, and good thing you never gave up in 2008 and just thought, oh, well, or who knows what would happen all these years, right?
That's right. And that's
Yeah.
true. And these jobs are not easy. And it's a just to leave it on that, we are being tested spiritually here constantly to see where you are at with this type of work and with where this planet is going. People in this industry are going to be needed more than ever. And the people that care and that don't really care much about their success but care about people are going to succeed. And another thing my first guru said to me, he said, if you get into astrology and you go for the masses, just plan on getting a few people. If you go into this business for those few people, plan on working with the masses.
Mhm.
So we're connected to people. And it's important just to care about the people that you're connected to that are coming to you. It doesn't matter how many of them there are. And when you start caring about the people that are in front of you, even if it's just 15, 20 people, that starts to spread over time. So go for the masses, get a few, go for the few, get the masses.
Wow, well said, Jade. Such a good speaker. And I know with such a spiritual path like this, you've been to India, all these gurus, all these things that have taken place in your life. Many times people dabble a little bit into fasting. So I'm just really curious, have you ever done any types of fasting? Sometimes people will do like a water fast or some type of different fast here and there for like deeper spiritual purposes. Have you ever done that or no?
Oh yes, oh yes. In India, when we were doing the silent retreats, also
Mm,
fat. Now, oddly
yeah.
enough, since I've been vegan, I haven't felt drawn to fasting
Mm,
because I feel so much power through putting life into my cells by eating raw. I feel like my body needs that more than fasting.
Makes sense.
When I was just vegetarian, which included a lot of, cheese and butter and all that stuff, my body would say it's time to fast. I could feel it. It's time to stop eating for a while. But since I've been vegan, I just feel with the type of condition I have personally, that
Hmm.
putting life into my cells is the most important thing I can do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good you listen to yourself. And I know with houses, because I just emailed your office yesterday and asked something, do you think that there is something to like a house number? So like the actual house number, like right now I live at 438. So what would that be? That's like a six, I think, right? You add four, three, and eight together and then combine the two numbers. Is that what you do? And
That's
do you
right.
think there
That,
is something to these numbers?
yeah, I use astrological numerology. I don't use traditional numerology, which means the numbers I use all apply to these 27 signs and to the 12 signs. Like if someone says, "Oh, I'm moving into a house and it's a 3," I'm like, "Okay, that's Gemini." So that's actually going to be a house where there's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of activity moving through that house. As a matter of fact, the house could be confusing for someone that has a lot of Vata or air energy. So I'd be like, that might not be the best place for you. I do astrological numerology, which is ruled over by the planet Jupiter. Traditional numerology is ruled over by Mercury,
Hmm.
and it's the stuff that most people get involved in. So, but all the numbers when I give people information, it's all astrological information.
Mm,
I had someone say the number for this house is an 8, and I'm like, okay, 8. That's Scorpio, and also if I use the 27 signs, it's a star called Park. Okay, that's not a very easy house. And then I look at her chart, and I'm like, oh, but she's got 3 planets in the eighth house. I'm like, nope, that house is for you. It's actually
hmm.
a match. But for someone else, that could be a scary house experience. So you have to know someone's chart, in my opinion, to align them with the right numbers for the house they should be in too. So it's very much like the locational map, matching your chart up with the chart of that location. It's the same thing with a house. Some
Yeah.
people's charts do better in challenging houses, and vice versa.
Wow. Interesting. And I know when you do a reading, people need to know their birth time too, right? Like I got you my birth time, my birthday. I had to get it from the historical records at the hospital. But what if people don't have that birth time? They just can't get it from the hospital or whatever. Can you still do
Oh,
readings?
yes. You use the moon as their rising sign. So there's all types of, ways of trying to find someone's birth time and all that. But, the moon as your rising, which means we just tilt your chart to the moon as the rising sign, which is
Hmm.
with a lot of my clients in India that don't know their birth time, we're never even given it. We
Hmm.
just use the moon as the rising, and it works pretty well. Even if I have the person's time, I will still look at their chart from their ascendant and from their moon as the rising. So yeah, I daily will give a reading or two of someone that doesn't have their birth time, and they're accurate. I like to have it though. I mean, the right
Hmm.
birth time aligns what we call the major tempest in your life. Tempest means major cycle. In India, it's called a dasha. These are cycles that are kind of powerful, and you don't get those if you don't have the right time, but you can still give a good reading.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you give good readings, so you'll have to let everybody know where they can find you. They want to get a reading. Let me know. I'll put the information down below. And if there's anything you want to end off with, anything else you want to share about what you do or any words of inspiration at all, then absolutely do so.
You can find me. I like being found on Instagram. Uh,
Mhm.
Jade Sol Luna, that which is my real name, Jade SOL, middle name and last name Luna. Instagram I like to use for everything. It's out of a lot of the controversy that exists today. I actually like the way it's run. Or Asterian, Asterian, AsterianAstrology.org. Instagram, Jade Sol Luna, or AsterianAstrology.org. You know, we have an intense year coming. We have Saturn going into Pisces, we have Jupiter going into Gemini, Rahu going into Aquarius. We have an intense year coming. It's important for people to realize that whatever goes on the outside is meant to kind of pull us on the inside. You know, all the challenges that we experience in the world are meant to find us, are meant for us to find who we are on the inside. So, one of the reasons I live out here in Joshua Tree is because I'm in the world, but not really a part of it. The
Mhm.
world is the way that it is, and the world is the way that it's supposed to be. The challenges of it are meant to take us on the inside. Saturn and Pisces is an alignment that concerns me a little bit because it's really deep. It's going to pull people into a lot of emotions they haven't dealt with for a really long periods of time that since their youth. But these astrology alignments can be used to purge things out so we can grow. So use the things that are happening externally, go internal. Otherwise, we're going to run into some pretty powerful things this year. I think people are going to be shocked by some of the things that come about in this particular year. And that's astrology. That's not political, by the way.
Yeah.
That's just purely on the astrological level. These are things that are going to be going on that are really going to challenge us to go within and to find our true center. When you find your center, you can endure anything that comes your way. If you don't have your center, everything is a challenge. And what your center is, it's a place inside of you that radiates light. It's the solar element of the heart chakra. Inside of the heart is a solar energy. And if you find it, you're at home. And then you're unaffected by the ways of the world and the things of it. So I'm encouraging people to really focus in on their spiritual life as the universe is going to go through some pretty powerful transitions in this particular year.
I love that. Well, I've loved this talk. And Jade Sol Luna, that's your birth name?
Yeah. I did have hippie parents. I have a brother named Sky, and it's like the parents didn't even want to know the sex of their children before they were born. And I also had a lot of Mormonism in my upbringing, so I had Mormon hippies as parents. That's why when I started going to India, it was a big challenge for my family and all that stuff like that. But yes,
Yeah.
that is my name.
I
Yep.
love it. Meant to be. Just like
Yes, that's
totally meant to
correct.
be. Like me, my last name's Barry, and people are like, "Is that your real last name?" I'm
It
like,
makes a
"Yeah,
lot of
because it
sense.
fits perfectly." But well, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed it. I got very inspired. So you gave me a lot of aha moments. So thanks for coming on. I'm sure it's definitely gonna just trigger so much inspiration with the viewers and just benefit their life as a positive. And to everyone watching, I hope you get a reading with Jade. It was literally one of the best experiences I've ever had. So go follow him. I'll put all the information down below. I'll put another great podcast on the screen right now for you guys to watch, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.